Yes, my name is Karin Lukas. I'm a senior researcher at the Ludwig Boltzmann Institute of Human Rights in Vienna. I'm also member of the European Committee of Social Rights of the Council of Europe and a cluster leader of the FRAME project, responsible for the factors cluster.
Okay, thank you. May I ask you how you would describe the potential of the European Social Charter in this particular context of financial and economic crisis?
Yeah, I think the European Social Charter has quite a lot of potential to protect social rights in the European Union in consequences of the European context in terms of social rights protection, where after the economic crisis quite detrimental. So we see increased long-term unemployment in the European Union. Certain groups, for example, children, young persons, at a higher risk of poverty and deteriorating working conditions that are particularly striking for families of migrants. So we are still feeling a lot the consequences of the economic crisis on social rights. And given the situation within the EU, there are quite some accountability gaps and governance gaps when it comes to the protection of social rights by the EU and within the EU, because the competence for social rights are still largely with the member states of the European Union. And we've seen cases before the Court of Justice of the European Union that made it quite clear that as long as austerity measures are not in execution of European Union law, which is largely the case, as competency has not gone from the member states to the European Union institutions, there is not a jurisdiction of the court. So we have seen cases in France regarding the dismissal of young workers in certain circumstances without justification that were said to be, we don't know whether they're in conformity with EU law or not, because the court says it's not an implementation of EU legislation, therefore I have no competence. Similar situation in the case in Romania, where there were actually wage cuts of workers because of austerity measures. And again, the court said it's not execution of EU law, therefore I have no jurisdiction over this case. So there is quite a big accountability gap, and therefore a great potential of the other human rights instruments of the Charter, and also to some extent of the European Convention on Human Rights to protect social rights in the European Union. And we've actually had quite a few cases on the situation in Greece of austerity measures that the Greek government took in execution of the Troika requirements. And we had decisions of violation in these situations.
Yeah, so actually this was my second question, if I may jump on this collective complaints procedure that you have in this charter and with the committee. Can you perhaps tell us a bit and assess how it works and if it's efficient in your view, this collective complaints procedure, please?
Yeah, we can see that quite strikingly the number of complaints went up sharply after the economic crisis hit the European Union fully. So there is a lot of take-up of this collective complaints procedure by NGOs and trade union representatives. It's actually quite a unique procedure. It gives civil society organizations the opportunity to file complaints before the European Committee of Social Rights and to say that the country X, Greece, Bulgaria, Finland, etc., so there are 15 states that have ratified this procedure, has violated the European Social Charter. And besides the reporting procedure, which is similar to other UN procedures where we get state reports and maybe NGO reports where we get more of an overview of the social rights situation, here we can really look in depth at a specific collective problem. As, for example, the austerity measures and how they impact on specific groups. And there were 4 complaints actually filed by trade unions that said that the austerity measures taken by Greece violate the right to social security in that case. And we reviewed the measures that were taken. They were very diverse, starting from cuts in holiday bonuses to cuts in pensions. And we looked at each of these measures, and also sort of at the overall consequence of these measures. And we said that some measures, when they are temporary, are legitimate to be taken in view of a financial stabilization. For example, a temporary cut in holiday bonuses, if they do not bring the employee at risk of being poor to or below the poverty line, is as a temporary measure okay. But there were other measures, in particular the pension cuts, that clearly put certain segments of pensioners close to the poverty line or even below the poverty line, and that was a clear violation of the European Social Charter.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you. Now, a last question, perhaps more generally on the position of the European Committee of Social Rights, and perhaps if you could a bit discuss the implementation and how those decisions are implemented in practice. What's the follow-up, please?
Right. The committee issued a statement, so-called statement of interpretation on the economic crisis in 2009, where it basically said that every austerity measure is a retrograding measure. That means that the state is going behind its obligations instead of going forward, implementing progressively those obligations. And therefore, every such measure must be justified. And the committee looks in very strict terms whether this measure is justified. So we apply a very strict proportionality test. Is the measure necessary? Are the means adequate, and so on? And there is also, given these complaints that are mentioned, quite consistent case law of the committee in that respect. How are these decisions then implemented? We are a quasi-judicial body. We are not a court, so we cannot, with fines or so, enforce these decisions. But we go through the structure of the Council of Europe. So there is the Committee of Ministers that discusses the decision and then issues a recommendation endorsing this decision. So we had no cases where the Committee of Ministers went against the decision of the Committee of Social Rights. And then there is follow-up both by the Committee of Ministers and also by our committee on how the government implements the decision. So in our reporting procedure, we have, when it comes to, for example, the article with Greece, Article 12, the right to social security, in the reporting, sort of a section follow-up on collective complaint 76 or 77.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Lukas.
Thank you.